everyone, Tori the Crafty Girl here, and today is an impromptu video. They're almost always impromptu. Whatever pops into my brain is what I'm going to work on. But today is a little bit different. If you have been here for any amount of time, you probably know I've been focusing a lot on yarn crafts. But today I brought her out of retirement. Here she is. My lovely sewing machine. And if you don't know, I'm actually a sewist by nature. It is how I kind of started with social media, with crafting on social media, was teaching people how to sew and different tips and tricks. And, you know, then I got into different crafts, and that's why I'm the crafty girl though. I love pretty much all crafts. I think there's so much to be learned and enjoyed from all of them. But anyway, I digress. So I got invited kind of last minute to this Shania Twain concert that is in 2 days. And I think that I know what I'm wearing. I was going to kind of customize something to wear, but it's kind of a professional crowd, I think. So I'm going to pull back a little. I mean, I will show you right here an image of the leopard cape that I'm going to wear, that I thrifted, that I've had forever. It's pretty amazing. But I was like, well, what can I make? What can I actually make for this concert that would be, you know, something that I might use afterwards? And then it hit me. Because it's a concert, if you've been to a concert in any way, shape, or form, any recently, or any sort of event at all, there's usually a bag requirement. So I checked the bag requirement, and it's 6.5 inches by 4.5 inches for a tiny little clutch. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I haven't made an envelope clutch in forever. So anyway, I thought I'd bring you along, and we're gonna wing it. I don't have a pattern. I'm just gonna kind of go with what I think is gonna work, and we're gonna get to the 6.5 by 4.5 inch clutch mark. So if you're planning on going to a concert or venue and you can only have this little tiny clutch size, then stick around, and maybe, you know, I'll be able to teach you something. If not, maybe you'll just enjoy some of my mistakes along the way, because I always make them. So let's dive in. So first of all, here's my lovely machine. I do use the Singer Heavy Duty. She is my favorite. I've had her for a while, and she works pretty much on anything that I need her to do, she works for. So what I've decided, I actually have this piece of cardboard that is kind of the shape. It's almost the shape. It's a little big, but we want to make sure I have some seam allowance here. And then I also traced my phone case so that I know that it has to be at least that size so that my phone can fit in. So that's our goal, is to stay within these parameters, but be able to fit my phone, my credit card, my ID, and chapstick. And a tissue. So those are the things I need to fit into this little tiny bag. And because it is Shania Twain, I immediately went to what are all the things that represent Shania. We have denim, we have Let's Go Girls, you know, there's sparkle. So we have, if I have time, I can do some, you know, little bedazzling with rhinestones, which I hope I have time to do this. And those are the tools we're going to use. Also, because with these envelope clutches, they can actually get a little flimsy if you don't have anything in them. In the past, I've actually used cardboard. Problem with cardboard, if it gets wet, obviously it's going to break down. I did use cardboard on another envelope clutch project, and then I actually wrapped it in tape to protect it like a number of times, and it's held up for quite some time. So you can do that, and it's a great way to use up all that cardboard that I'm pretty sure you have, because I always have cardboard. But what I found is recently when I went to the craft store, I picked up these mesh sheets, and I had no idea what I was going to use these for, but I was like, you know what? It's good to have them around because you never know when inspiration will hit, and that's what is happening today. So I'm going to use this instead of cardboard on the inside of the actual clutch to just give it a little bit more shape. I'm also going to use a clasp of some kind, either a zipper, which I have a boatload of zippers here, so we can use zippers. Or I can use a magnet closure, which I have I pretty much have every closure you can imagine for sewing, but we'll decide. So first thing we're gonna do is create the shape, and then I will show you what the next steps are. Now, I always keep denim scraps for a number of reasons. They come in so clutch when you have like, you know, a hole that you need to patch. These work really well. They're great thicker fabric for things like this, like a clutch. So I always have this. One thing that I did find is I had a lot of denim that had a lot of stretch in it, and stretch is not what we're looking for. We want this to actually be pretty solid. This does have a little bit of stretch. I would say maybe it has like 1%. It's very minimal, and I don't think it's going to impact the bag itself. And that little bit of stretch actually might come in handy because I do want to be able to put my phone in and take my phone out as well. So what I'm probably going to do, let's see. And again, I am just winging this here. First thing I'm going to do is cut a straight line, and we're going to cut this with the grain. So when you look at a pair of, like if you look at denim in general, you can see that the grain is going like this. Okay, so it's going this direction. So we want to make sure that we are aligning to that grain. I don't want to cut this on a bias. That will not give us what we are looking for. Now you'll see over on this side, this seam is actually already set up that way. So if I wanted to keep this seam here to give a little bit of interest to the bag, I certainly could. I'm not going to because this is a tiny, tiny little clutch that we're allowed to take, and I want to get rid of as much bulk as possible. So we want to make sure that we have enough space. So let's say if the fabric is here, that we want to fold it in half so we have enough fabric here. And if we do that, see what we're going to have. Okay, so this will kind of be what our clutch shape is. Now we're going to make this a triangle clutch. That's one of my favorite styles to make. And what that means is we're actually going to, in addition to that, we're going to come up one more, and then we will end up cutting this in a perfect point, and then we'll end up attaching that. So we have enough fabric. That's the first thing that we want to do. And then you might want to map out your cut lines. Now I use these friction pins. Okay, these friction pins. This is blue, so it's not going to be as noticeable. I'm going to sew it up. You won't see it anyway. But these are erasable with heat. So they're really super cool. But keep in mind, they're not 100% erasable. So if you use them on like a white cotton, if it heats up at all, you're going to see it. So just be careful of that. So let's start down here. When they say you should always cut or measure twice and cut once, they are 100% correct. Now, normally I use a rotary cutter and I put it on my board. So yes, this is definitely a little bit different than what I typically do, but all right. So I did it this way because then I'm going to take this side and just pull it over because it should line up. Now, one of the unglamorous pieces of sewing is all of the measurements and math that you need to do, but it is imperative to the success of your project. So even though I want to do this quickly, I want to do it correctly as well. Okay, so we are almost at 4.5, and as we sew the seams together, then that should account for that as well. I'm going to get this one cut a little bit more. I would just hate to have it just a little bit too big. I know they're not going to like take out the millimeter measuring and make sure it's to the millimeter, but you never know. They might. You never know. Although we are in Spokane, so maybe not. All right, so now we have that. The next step, so we know that our clutch is going to go all the way down. Now you can vary this pattern. You can actually do this a number of ways. If you don't want this part up here, you can just cut it here and then just have it a fold in half and then have a zipper. But in this case, I do want the flap to come down because I just want to have that extra layer of protection here. I mean, this is pretty thick, so that's, yeah. And this side, what I'm going to end up doing is, if I have time, I'm going to take my Cricut machine and I'm going to put a quote right here. I'm either going to do, let's go girls. That's pretty, standard. It's what a lot of people do. I love it. And I would carry it again and again. And then also, that don't impress me much. So I haven't quite decided that piece. But, okay, this is what I'm doing. So see, you get to hang out with me as I'm creating. Also, just in case you were wondering how exciting it gets down here in my basement, I'm going to show you. A little spider came out to play. That's why I have one of these. Bye-bye, spider. Okay, cool. All right, I'm gonna put that somewhere far away from us in a second, but I just had a revelation and I wanted to share with you what I'm gonna do. I'm actually going to, instead of making this a triangle clutch, I'm gonna make this, it's still gonna be an envelope style. So you're gonna have, it's gonna be sewn here on both sides, but this is gonna come down like this because guess what I'm gonna add here? Let's come over here. Let's come over here. Let's come over here to my crazy fringe. We have fringe in like every color. Oh, but I probably want to go with gold. Gold fringe? Red fringe? Ooh, maybe red fringe. The shirt that I'm wearing has red lips on it. I think I'm going to go with red fringe. Let's grab this. Oh my gosh, it's a disaster. Okay, back. Okay, let's take a look. Let's see. So my idea is to have this on here. Oh yeah, and then you'll have fringe hanging. I think I like that. I'm not sure if I like this or the gold yet, but I like that idea. So that's what we're doing. Okay, so now what we really need to do then, since I'm, bye-bye. Come here, spider. So we really need to make sure that the length and width is pretty spot on. I'm gonna use, oh my gosh, what kind of allowance? I don't ever use a really big sewing allowance. 3/8 inches is pretty standard. I might do 1/8. That's what I like to do. So you have to keep that in mind. So you need to have your seam allowance. But let's see, if I sew this like this, let's just double check measurements. So we're at 4.5 exactly. So I'm happy with that. I'm happy with the 4.5 exactly. If I pull this down here, what's the length? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Nope, way too long. Okay, so we need to cut, this side is pretty straight. So I'm actually going to come in here and good thing my fabric scissors are still sharp. Okay, now I do need to make sure my phone will fit in here. Since I'm recording with it, I can't use it, but I can do this. Okay, well, my phone's obviously not this thick. It's this thick. And that should be okay. But also, that's very, very, oh, I shouldn't have cut that off. I should have left it on. Okay, so we're gonna have to do a very tiny seam allowance on this because I did just cut off too much. See, this is what happens when you're with me, when I don't plan out a project. All right, so we're gonna do a really tiny seam allowance so that we still can, in fact, I might be able to pull that out a little. Okay, but I'm also gonna line this. So the other thing we're gonna do, which I did not mention, is now that we have this piece cut, we're going to take our lining fabric, whatever fabric that is going to look like for you. In this case, I like the idea of using the Grrls if I'm going to use Let's Go Girls. I also have some other that I might use, but I really like this right here with all the colors. Yeah, I think we're just gonna go with this because I really love it. And I don't have enough to really do anything else with it. This fabric, by the way, is 100% certified organic cotton from Cloud9 Fabric. So this will be our lining. So we're going to match it up. Now, if you were gonna do something, so the way you wanna think about your lining, well, it doesn't matter. Right now, we're gonna do this shape, so it's fine. We're gonna cut out our fabric exactly the same size. And then we'll end up sewing it together, leaving a little space to turn. So we're gonna do that, but first I'm gonna cut this out, and I do wanna make sure it is sitting straight on here. Now this side is fine, it's gonna be inside, but I just don't want any extra bulk in here, so I'm just gonna trim this up a little bit. All right. So last thing I'm gonna get out before I sew this together is an important tool that you need for sewing that a lot of people don't think about. And that is your iron. So there's a lot of pressing that is involved. You need to make sure that your seams are nice and straight, and you do that by pressing throughout the project. And this little gal right here, pretty amazing. This is a Cricut a little Cricut mini press, mini heat press, something like that. But I love this tool. I use it for most of my crafting. Anytime that fabric is involved, it has a little pointed tip here. And I have had this, again, for a really long time, and it works wonderfully. Okay, green means go. So just give it a little bit of a press here. Oh yeah, and here I can show you. Remember that blue ink that was right here? There it is. It's all gone. So cool. Get this all lined up. And then I'm going to add just some sewing clips. Cool. All right, so I am doing something that I don't typically do. I'm not actually going to do a test piece, which I absolutely recommend using a test piece so that you can test your tension and your, width and needle position and length and all of those things. Very important. But, I'm going to break one of my own rules. I did restring it. I did rethread it. I'm using a blue that kind of matches the denim, although for this part it doesn't matter. It's not visible. And then I'm also going to use a tool that I absolutely adore, this little magnet. That way I can ensure that I'm getting the exact same around the end. But see, the bottom fabric moves around. Okay, so I want to start sewing right there. Okay, let's see. And again, I'm not testing this, so let's hope it works. Okay, good. My tension is great. Everything looks wonderful. I will tell you that is not always the case, and I'm very lucky. And then we'll reinforce it. A few backward stitches. So now what we need to do, and it's a little puffy, I think that'll be fine. We need to go around and trim off the excess, especially because this denim is so thick. So when you're trimming corners, what you do, you want to get close to that corner without cutting through any of those threads. So you just want to like get I'm not even showing you. Get really close, cut it at an angle. So it's still attached on both sides. Oh, you can see it clear over here. So it's still attached, but it's at an angle. And then you're going to do the same on all corners, and then you're going to trim off the edge as well. So let's just go through. Okay, and now we're going to cut off all of the extra. We had a lot of extra up here. And I'm going to cut it pretty close just to remove bulk. Now, one thing I'm going to show you is I'm actually not going to be trimming this because we want to make sure that we have this space so that we can fold this under and sew this back up, because we are going to want to sew this up once we get that little plastic piece in there. If you are not putting the little plastic piece or anything, an insert, we'll just call it an insert going forward. If you're not putting an insert in here, you still need to leave a hole probably at least this big so that you can turn it right side out and press it. So if you're going to do that, I would say don't do it on the side. It's going to be really noticeable. In our case, we're going to add fringe, so I would probably do it on one of the ends and leave an end here. That way when you sew it up with stitches, if you're going to put something over it, it won't even be noticeable. So just as a heads up. All right, now I do recommend having one of these in your kit, in your sewing kit. I have one of these somewhere and I can't find it. So we are going to open up this little vintage one right here. I got it at the thrift store for $1, but I'm glad I have an extra one because I use them all the time. And what a point turner is good for is it's a little bit duller on the end. So some people recommend using a seam ripper like this to poke out corners. But as you can tell, if you use a seam ripper, this is probably going to poke right through your fabric, which I've done on, oh, my nails. Ooh, I need to do my nails. Those are bad. Anyway, so this one works much better. You can use a number of tools too. You can even use like a knitting hook or crochet hook. Those work too. I just happen to have this one and I knew where it was. So just be gentle. You don't want to poke through. Even with the dull edge, it will still poke through. And I did realize that something else we could have done, I could have left this seam totally open on the end and then sewed the fringe right into the seam. So that's another option for you. Again, if I had planned this out a little bit better, there are some things I may do differently. Maybe not. I never know how my brain's going to respond. Okay, that looks pretty good. So I'm going to give this another press and get all these seams nice and flat and meet you back here. So we may have to pivot because, again, in my haste to try to make sure that this was going to be the right size to make sure it's small enough, I went too small. So the problem with 6.5 by 4.5, like my iPhone case is almost exactly that size, which means it's got to be to the like little tiny millimeter in order for this to fit. And unfortunately, as you can see, the plan is here, and I'm not going to throw my phone into my purse without my case. It might be able to slide in, but it may not. So we're gonna pivot, and this is, like Bob Ross always did, just make a mistake into a butterfly or a flower or something. Y'all know I always like to show you the mistakes I made because I feel like as creators, it's part of the process. So there are a few things we could do. I could take it apart and maybe add some add some extension pieces on the side. I could also make it, add some pieces here just so that it's a little bit wider. And if it's wider, then this could kind of sit at an angle. I don't really like that idea. We could also change it a little and go this direction. And yes, the ladies will no longer be ladies. But what we could do is something like this. Let's see, or something like this. Pull this up. Okay, so we can make a little clutch like this. It is within, let's see. Okay, so this is 6 inches. So this would actually be fine this direction. This direction, it's a little too big. So let's, again, playing around. This is how things happen when you work without patterns. So we are gonna take off about that much right here, and easiest way to do that, let's just fold this over to there and there. Go a little bit over for seam allowance, and then I can do this one of two ways. I can just cut this off because I'm going to go back anyway, which I will. Okay, so we're taking off about 3/4 of an inch is essentially what we are removing from the side here. So since this is already seamed up, we're going to actually cut this side because this seam will stay intact. This will stay intact. It'll just be this side over here that we want to take that 3/4 of an inch off. Okay, here we go. All right, let's try this again. So this is where we are at the moment. Is it big enough to fit in? There you go. So my iPhone will fit in here, my ID, my credit card, and my little chapstick and a tissue. All of that will fit in here. So with that said, now we need to figure out what else we're going to do. I don't want to leave the top open because being at a concert, someone could stick their hand in here, or more likely I'm going to bend over and everything's going to fall out. So I'll figure out some form of closure on here. I'll look through my scraps. Maybe there's something fun. Maybe we take something like that. Because we still want to add, I still definitely want to add some of this. I'm not quite sure
what else I want to do that. And I also want to print out with my Cricut a little saying and then add some rhinestones. But for now, we're going to leave it like this for today, and I will pick this back up tomorrow. We'll see. But this is where we are right now.
And after a good night's sleep, I'm back, and time to take a look at this concert clutch one more time. So this is where I left it. I actually played around with it, and here's what we were gonna do. The one thing that I kind of regret at this point, but it doesn't make sense to waste this fabric, is guess what I found? Guess what I found, everybody? This would have been so perfect as the lining. So maybe we'll just make another one. Who knows? Maybe my bestie who's going will need a bag. But what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to keep this a slip bag. I had actually planned on doing a zipper, but after I tested the zipper, I don't know where, okay, the zipper. After I tested it, once I opened it up here, I realized that it would not open wide enough to fit my hand in there to get down to like my chapstick or anything like that. So if you wanted to, if maybe this was big enough for your needs, you could use one of these zippers, and then all you'd have to do is attach it on both sides on the inside like this, and you would have this super simple. And you can do it by sewing it on by hand or by machine, totally up to you. But we're not going to use this because I have another plan. So I still had I still have a ton of fabric scraps. I went looking for a pocket, right? So a lot of denim jackets, they have the little V pocket with the button cut out. And I was like, oh, well, if I already have one of those, maybe I should try it. I didn't have one. So instead, this is that leftover piece that we had when we first started. And we already have a nice little V here. And I don't have to finish this because I don't mind the little bit of a rough edge over here. So what we'll do is we'll attach it on the back. Okay, so we're going to cut this in a straight line. I'm not going to finish it because I'm actually going to rough it up with some scissors and give it kind of a French look back here. It's fine that it'll look a little distressed. We're going to have this pocket here. Not sure if I want to go a little asymmetrical. I'm not quite sure. But either way, I'm going to put a little buttonhole in here, and then we'll have a button on the inside. So I'll probably put it on the center just to make it easier to add that button. Then what we're going to do, we're not going to use that plastic, the plastic grid piece in here, because I definitely, again, don't want it to be too, if it's too thick, I'm not going to be able to open it as little as I can to get what I need to. So we're going to forego that at this point. So here's the joy. You get to join me for this crazy journey that is my brain and these creative projects. And this is what happens. So we're going to do that. And then we're going to, instead, I found my gold fringe, which at first I was going to use that red. It's just I'm not vibing with it. So I'm going to use this gold fringe, and I'm going to sew it up the seams. So we'll have fringe hanging on this side and fringe hanging on this side. We'll have our strap come down here with a little button here. And then I still think I'm going to print out on the Cricut, and then on either the front here or on the back, depending on how I want the text to look, I'm going to have a little Shania catchphrase. The last thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use as much of the scraps as I can. I'm going to make the little wrist strap out of the seam right here. And so I will put the seam or the wrist strap up here, and that will be our little clutch for the concert. So hopefully we don't run into any more issues, but that is the plan. So now it is time. I distressed this. I might do a little more here, but for now we're good. What I'm trying to decide is I think I want to put a snap on here, and I don't know if I want to do it now or later, because I have some pearl snap vintage pearl snaps, and I think that would actually really add to this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch with the what do you call this, fringe over here. Make sure that all of it is out. You don't want to accidentally stitch it in. It is pretty thick. Typically I would consider changing the needle, but we're just gonna give it a go. And I want to get it as close to this edge as possible, so we shall see. All right. Again, there's no shame in going slow. We have added the fringe. We have our little snap. If I can do it one-handed. There we go. We have our little snap, our little slip here that our phone and our important things fit into. And then there's a couple things we're going to do to finish this piece. I'm actually going to go in and distress this a little bit more so it looks intentional. I'm also going to add a strap, and for the strap, I had initially thought I was going to use some more of the scrap denim, but this is so thick. It's really thick. And what that means is that it's going to be challenging for this little light bag to get it to look great. So I found, I bought a few of these years ago. These are from the Dollar Tree, back when it was just the Dollar Tree, and these are eyeglass cords. And these work for so many different things. And in fact, I'm going to use this one right here as the wristlet strap. So I'm going to actually go through, I'm going to stitch this on by hand, and I'm going to go through each of these little, I think I'm probably going to put it on the inside down a little bit, stitch it up the side just to secure it. But I mean, it's pretty cheap. So you don't want to use something like this if it's going to be heavy. In fact, I may even reinforce it with like a ribbon through it and then stitch it all. In fact, I might do that. But before we do that, let me show you what I have been working on. So what I have actually been working on is I designed a couple of texts in Cricut. So I'm going to put this little saying on the very back. So it's going to say, "Let's go girls." And I think I'm going to use pink sparkle vinyl. That's the plan. And then this little one, that don't impress me much, that's going to go somewhere on the bag, maybe on the inside as like a little surprise. So this is what is happening now. I'm going to print this out with my Cricut, and then I will be able to iron that on the bag, and we'll be able to wrap up our Shania bag. So exciting. So many different crafts involved in this process. By the way, just so that you know how I do all of this, I actually designed this in Canva. So I just use Canva. You can use Canva for free. I have a pro subscription, and that's just because I do so much work in Canva. But yeah, I just designed this in Canva and then imported it with a clear background or transparent background. And then I'm going to, because it's going to be iron on vinyl, I need to reverse it. I'm going to do that. And then you just send it over to the Cricut and iron it on. It's a pretty cool tool. I really still love my Cricut. I just haven't done much with it. Usually around the holidays, you do a little bit more. So let's go finish that up and see how it goes. So here she is at work. What she does, you send the image from the computer and it will cut out what you tell it to cut out. So it doesn't take that long. I did a lot of really tiny letters, so this might take a little bit longer, but the second piece, you'll see it'll actually go a lot faster. Oh yeah, see, the bigger one goes so much faster. All right, so while that's working, I'm gonna go heat up my iron. What I'm doing right now is I'm taking off the extra. Probably should have cut it closer, but oh, I gotta be careful because these are tiny little letters. I specifically chose fonts that I know will weed well. So the process, if you're not familiar with a Cricut, the process of removing the carrier paper is called weeding, which is funny because whenever I post content, Cricut content about weeding the fabric, it always gets flagged and delayed.
Okay. All right, and just to show you, I took this and I just gave it a little tug like this, and it totally snapped off. So yes, these are definitely not well put together. And here we are again. I'm changing my mind one more time for the handle. Again, yesterday I was coming up with some ideas to create this little handle out of, because I wanted like sparkle or gold, and then I decided let's go ahead and use this leopard cotton that I have. But I'm actually going to use this iron-on vinyl, so it's going to give it a thicker feeling. It'll make it more resistant, and it'll make it water resistant. And what I'm going to make, I'll show you. I'm going to make one of these. So I have a bunch of these. I love these. They're just little wristlets. I'll make it a little bigger so it fits over my wrist. And then I'm going to add a grommet here to the top of the bag, to the back of the bag, or the top of the bag. I haven't decided, wherever it's going to be the most sturdy. So I'm going to add the grommet, and then that way I can add this with the little wristlet on it. And then this is also, because it's like this, I can switch it out if I ever want to do that. Or I could make the wristlet piece of it, the wrist piece, and just use it on other projects. So anyway, that is what we are going to do now. And this is going to be it, because I only have a little bit of time left today before the concert. And so this needs to happen today.
Okay, I'm going to show you the whole look together, but here is the finished bag. Again, perfect size for the concert venue and secure with the snap. And then the little wristlet here in the leopard. I do have my little leopard cape that I'm going to wear. Here's the look. I have like little white Rebecca Minkoff, little Western booties on, my flare jeans. And yes, I'm wearing makeup. I know I don't wear makeup a lot on this channel, and that's just because, you know, I don't typically wear a lot of makeup. But, you know, Shania has a new song, like, about empowering you with makeup. So anyway, hopefully you've enjoyed this content. If so, don't forget to like and subscribe for more crafty related content. And until next time, everybody, see ya!